From American Falls to Malad, we've got the biggest stories in District 5 covered. This is the Southeast Idaho Prepcast with Jordan Kaye.
That's right. Welcome into another edition of the Southeast Idaho Prepcast here on IdahoSports.com, talking everything District 5 week in, week out. I'm Brandon Baney, joined by Jordan Kaye from the Idaho State Journal in Pocatello. Jordan, what's going on?
Not much. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. So you can get this podcast in a number of different ways. You can get the audio only each week by going to our website, IdahoSports.com. Across the top of the navigation bar on the homepage, there's a little drop-down menu with all of our Prepcasts. You just click on Southeast Idaho Prepcast, and there's a player right there on the page. You can listen to it. You can download this podcast wherever you download your podcasts, except for Google right now. Google messed something up on their end, and we're trying to get it figured out. So everyone else besides Google Podcasts, you can also check out the video each week on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, as well as our Facebook page. I always try to incorporate one video specific element. Jordan, it looks like you got a new haircut.
Oh yeah. It's a great clip special in Pocatello.
The Great Clip Special. You know what? I'm too cheap to go pay for a haircut. So my wife does it.
That's smart. I got clippers. I actually did it once in college, and it turned out so bad that I had to wear a hat the next day and go straight after class to the haircut place. So I learned my lesson once.
Oh no. Yeah, it's kind of funny. My wife cuts my hair probably like once a month, and we have the same routine, right? A 2 on top and a 3 on the beard. Well, this last time she got it mixed up. She did a 3 on top and a 2 on the beard. So it like really took off a lot. And my wife says she feels creepy when I'm like really clean shaven because I have such a young looking face. She's like, no, we can't have that. That makes me feel weird. So
you need to start getting carded everywhere you go.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, let's transition into District 5 athletics.
Yeah.
So I hope every show I feel like is going to be the Brandon Baney apology tour, right? So
sure.
2 weeks ago, I had to apologize for excluding Hunter Killian from our list of top 10 linebackers, right? The Pocatello fans, rightfully so. We're like, hey, where's our guy Hunter Killian? All right, this week I have to apologize because last week on the show, when we were talking about Class 2A, District 5, I forgot in my head that some of the teams in that conference had made the playoffs. In fact, every single team from that league made the playoffs.
I did too. So don't feel bad because I went a couple days ago and was looking through the 2A state bracket, and I'm going up and down the list. I'm like, did every team make it? Like I just didn't remember that. I don't know if it's because there's so many teams from District 5 or just the way the bracket shook up, but it was very weird. I was with you on that.
Yeah, and it turned out that, I mean, you had two of them playing each other in the first round. Aberdeen played Soda Springs, and then Bear Lake made it in as an at-large team. Obviously West Side made it in, and Malad as well. So yeah, that was my bad because it was like with you, I kind of forgot they do that first weekend of games where not everybody is playing, right? Some teams get buys and some don't. And so in my mind, I'm always thinking about the quarterfinals on. And so, yeah, it was not in the right headspace. And some folks in the comments, let us know, hey, what's up with that? But we want that. So bring it on. I probably say a lot of things that are wrong sometimes. And so,
yeah, because I mean, those are almost like those first round ones where it's almost a de facto playing game at some level. So, I mean, technically you're in the playoffs, but realistically, I mean, unless you get to the quarterfinals, I don't know how much you really count that, but I guess it counts.
Yeah, it definitely does. It's just, in my head, I wasn't really thinking about so anyways, I love it. I love the interaction from the fans. So please let us know if there's things that you think we got wrong or things that you want us to talk about. Let us know in the comments, or you can send me an email as well. My email is Brandon@IdahoSports.com, and let us know because we want that fan interaction. We want people talking. So it's definitely well received. One last thing on that. I think what happened last year in 2A football is it was kind of an unusual year where the teams up north really didn't get to play full schedule because of COVID-19. And so only one team from up north actually made it last year. And I think because of that, District 5 was able to to get some of those bids that maybe would have gone to other conferences. But
gotcha. Yep, that makes more sense. I was trying to remember the reasoning for it, but yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, last week we talked about obviously 2A District 5 football, and we talked about Highland and Pocatello because those were places you had gone. You have visited a few more football camps this week. Where have you been?
Went to Snake River, Blackfoot, Century, and then this week going to hit Marsh Valley, Aberdeen, and American Falls. So looking forward to those.
Awesome. Yeah, that's going to be really exciting. So let's talk about let's start with Snake River. They are, I mean, they're really good year in, year out. Coach Harrison does a tremendous job there. What was the vibe like at Snake River camp?
Well, it's interesting because they return their quarterback in Cole Gilbert, but they lose one of their biggest playmakers in wide receiver Trey Poulter, who is just this like 6'3", 6'4" beast. I just remember him in basketball season, a long, lengthy kid. And he was kind of, Cole's main target. So without him, I just don't know if Snake River is going to throw the ball as much. They do run the wing tee with, Coach Harrison's offense. And so, I kind of expect them to kind of have more of a ground game and really try and pound the ball a little more. And then, once it's run, catch the defense a little off guard. And all of a sudden, you got Cole Gilbert with a massive arm who can load up and fire to one of his targets. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a different Snake River this year. But like you said, I mean, they made the playoffs last year. Their division is pretty wide open. You would have to think that they're the favorites again to come out of District 5. What do you think?
I think between them and Marsh Valley, I think Marsh Valley has a lot of good, solid athletes, and you'll see that next week when you go visit them.
I know, Michael Belknap was one of the best linebackers in the area. He's going to be a senior. I think he had like 88 tackles and interception last year. I mean, just during basketball season, he looked like a linebacker. He's built pretty sturdy. And so I think he's probably going to anchor that defense. And then it's just, can the offense kind of live up to that? But yeah, no, that's, I think everyone is sort of circling that Marsh Valley Snake River game. And it's like, if all things go accordingly, that's going to be the game that decides the district. So I believe it's the second or third to last week of the season. So, they got some time, but that one's probably going to be the deal breaker.
Yeah, Marsh Valley, they have a lot of guys that go both ways. So Belknap also plays running back, and he rushed for over 1,000 yards last year. Peyton Howe is a great wide receiver. DB Roche, the quarterback, has been getting some college looks. So, so Snake River, they did advance to the playoffs last year, and then they had to play a really good Kimberly team out of the gate. How does Snake River take that next step where, we won our conference, but we want to compete with the other teams, the other district champs in 3A football?
Yeah, and a lot of it, that's the weird thing about the 3A. It's not like you can have this one guy. Last year it happened a little bit with Poulter, but you're not going to have this one guy who's just going to all of a sudden turn the tides of an entire program. So the big thing now is, okay, Jeb Harrison's been there for a while. How do you get every guy on the same page? How do you get them to, line up every down, knowing exactly what the details are of every play and to run the wing tee to precision every play? And so that was one of the things that Cole Gilbert was talking about. He's like, hey, I'm a senior now on this team. I've got to be the one who's going to lead. I've got to be the one who knows what every position is doing, understands the intricacies of the offense, and can point out like, hey, we're not doing this crisp enough. We're not doing this crisp enough. And to make sure that there's not those, lapses or mistakes or mental errors at all during a game, they could, maybe cost Snake River a game. And that may be the deciding factor when it comes playoff time. So, it's not going to be this one thing. They're not trying to tweak the entire offense, not going to, rebuild their defense. It's all about like, we have our system, we have our guys. How do we make sure everything is just crisp? And that's going to be the one thing I think Snake River has to focus on.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think 3A this year statewide is pretty wide open. I mean, you've got
except for Sugar Salem, maybe.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
really?
they did lose a lot of players, and they always seem to just reload instead of rebuild. But even last year, I mean, the gap between them and everybody else is pretty close. I mean, Homedale is a player or two away from winning. the state championship game. Homedale's going to be good. Weezer's going to be good. Timberlake. I think that might be one of the more wide open classifications all year long. The polls, I think, will change quite a bit week to week in 3A football, but
yeah, you don't have the west side, I guess.
right.
So yeah, that will be which will be interesting for District 5 because historically it's not like they've dominated that conference. It's a lot of times been some of the schools from further north or Idaho Falls. So perhaps this is the year the train kind of gets rolling in the right direction.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch as the season unfolds. Okay, so you went to Blackfoot as well. It's weird, right? Blackfoot is so close to District 5, but they are in District 6, quote unquote, even though they and Snake River are just miles apart. But what have you seen from Blackfoot?
Yeah, the big question there is like, how do you replace Tegan Thomas? You have this guy who rushed for 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns, was a first-team All-State guy. How do you replace him? And so their thing is like, we're not going to do it with one guy. We're going to have multiple people around. I think their quarterback is Jackson Grimmett, Jace Grimmett, one of the brothers. It's switched up.
Yeah, so Jace was the quarterback last year. He graduated. So
his brother Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and so he's had real reins of the JV offense last year. So now this year you bring him up to varsity, and luckily for them, they've got perhaps who could turn into one of the better playmakers in the state in Javante King. 6'5", 6'4", something like that. I mean, is going to get just ridiculous offers for basketball if he keeps everything going the way he can. And, a lot of the coaches there think that he's just as good at football if he kind of applies himself and really decides like, hey, I want to just be the best at this. And so that's going to be a nice weapon for Blackfoot. And, perhaps if they need a playmaker instead of Tegan Thomas, perhaps it's Javante King. But, they've got guys at different positions. I mean, you look at Bowen Robinson on the defense. I mean, he was, I think, a first-team All-State guy, had almost like 70 tackles last year. So he's going to kind of be the anchor of the defense. And, I think there's a lot of high hope for Blackfoot, especially in that division where they made the playoffs last year.
Yeah, it's interesting with Blackfoot. The schedule that they have is going to be pretty challenging. I believe they play Skyline pretty quickly out of the gates. When you look at Blackfoot's schedule, I think it's really going to come down to Blackfoot and Skyline in that District 6. Skyline, of course, the defending 4A state champs. Yeah, they play on September 17th. That's really early for a game that could decide that district.
Yeah, it's not like the Marsh Valley Snake River one where you've got to wait till like the second to last week of the season or whatever, which will kind of be interesting. Whoever wins that game, do you kind of put yourself on cruise control for the rest of the season? Or if you lose that game, do you think your hopes are just kind of completely out the window? I think regardless of who wins and loses that game, the reaction, the response is going to be the most, fun thing to watch out of that is what does that game do to both teams going forward? So, yeah, but I would have to think right now Skyline would probably be the favorite to win that game just because it's so early, just because they're coming off a state championship game. I think that's probably just where they're at. But, I think Blackfoot thinks they can win because the week one they're playing, oh man, what the 5A school.
Playing Thunder Ridge.
And they think they can win that game, and they think they are, could win that game. And so that might be a nice tone setter for them is right out of the gates. They have two unreal teams that they're going to be playing within the first, 4 weeks of ball. So that's going to be really kind of interesting to see, what they do in those first 4 or 5 weeks. Because realistically, if they go undefeated through that, I mean, there's a chance they're like, what, top 2, top 3 in the polls?
Yeah.
Maybe one. I mean, that's a statement right there if you can kind of run that gauntlet.
Yeah, and then I mean they play Snake River in the third week of the season. That's the rivalry game. And I guess as it relates back to District 5, I'm really disappointed that Blackfoot and Pocatello could not meet because I think that would be such an intriguing matchup.
It would be because you've got two teams who are realistically believe they're on the come up. these are teams that have not struggled the past, 3 or 4 years, but they haven't been, in the competition for a state championship. And I think both of them believe that in the next 3 or 4 years, that's where they're going to be at. So it'd be a real litmus test for both schools to be like, okay, we've got Hunter Killian against Bowen Robinson, and we've got, Javante King against Reichen Echohawk and Ryan Payne, and kind of go mano a mano to see, where it is. The one thing I will say is I think Blackfoot's line is a little bit bigger than Pocatello's. How that would, fare in a game, and, where, what that does with the skill positions, the overall, I don't know. But I think that's the one edge that I would think Blackfoot has over Pocatello just early.
Yeah, and that brings me to a bigger point of, and this might be wishful thinking on my part, but you see districts 5 and 6 combine for 5A football. I mean, why can't they do that for 4A football? I mean, you've got Pocatello, Century, and Preston that are kind of stuck in their own 3-team league. I mean, wouldn't it be easy to combine with the 5 teams that are in District 6 and have an 8-team conference? I mean, the schedule is pretty much taken care of. You have better representation in terms of state, but I don't know, how realistic is that?
Not super, because you look at a lot. I mean, right when I got here, I remember people telling me like crazy, like, did you realize that District 6 kicked us out? And that was like one of their big things, is like, District 5 almost feels like, the school Century, Pocatello, Preston feel like they're like better than, athletically at most sports than most schools in District 6. And I would, have to kind of do a revisionist history on it. I haven't, looked at the full thing, but it was one of those things where, they wanted to be a part of that, at least the District 5 schools, and were kind of told no, or, we don't really want you here. But, I know that, during basketball season, during track season, during wrestling season, all the District 5 coaches, kind of keep tabs on like what District 6 is doing and be like, could we beat them? Are we better than them? And do this thing where it's like they have a little fun being like, if we were still in District 6, you see how many people we'd have, and blah, 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 all that stuff. And so I don't know, there's a lot of politics to it that I don't really, quite understand and don't fully grasp. But yeah, that is a thing where District 5 is really not happy that they're in this 3-team conference, because you look at the, boys basketball season, when you've got 3 of the top, 6, 7, 8 schools in the entire state, and you get one into the tournament. And then it affects, smaller sports too. Wrestling. There were a lot of guys from Century who thought that, or coaches at Century who thought they should be getting, 2 guys per weight class to the state tournament. But because you're in for wrestling, there was no Preston wrestling team. So, or no, there was. So it was, I think there was Preston. Yeah. So 3, you're only getting 1 per weight class. Right. It was tennis that there's no Preston tennis team. And so, Century and Pocatello just played a district tournament, and it was just like whoever won went to state. And they're both coaches were like, this is so dumb. Like we really can't, get more schools and get more people to state. And I think that's really where it comes down to, is like, everyone looks at like the college football playoff and the March Madness of like, people like to judge those things based upon how many teams per conference get in. And it's one of those things where it's like, District 5 believes that they have far more schools that would qualify if they had the slots for it. And so, you might understand that more of the politics of it, but I think they can realign next year. That's right. Because it's a 2-year cycle.
Yep.
But it didn't sound like, from anyone I've talked to, it doesn't sound like it's, going to happen. Perhaps it's wishful thinking. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it is on my part, and it's so weird because we talked about at 5A, Highland, District 5 school, is part of that High Country Conference, District 5 and 6, but it's almost like we were told, like, it's almost like we have to include you because otherwise you're a 1-team league, and that just doesn't work. But like, I bet if you ask the coaches in Idaho Falls, they'd be a lot happier if Highland wasn't in their conference, because they're such a good program and a tough opponent, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I know it'd be interesting to see how that would shake out with the with the state berths. Like if you lose Highland, you lose a state berth, or I don't know. I don't know how it would work. I mean, you could do a whole thing where you realign all these conferences and make it much smarter. The one thing I always kind of am baffled by is that like 1A D2 and 1A D1 aren't combined and then split, geographically. Like there's times like Grace and Chalice are in the same conference. And so for conference games, they're going and driving 4.5, 5 hours. You're like, there's got to be a better way to do this. So,
yeah, it is. It gets tough, and in District 5 especially, there's so many small leagues that it's really hard. Yeah. Yeah, and then last point on the District 5, District 6 thing. It's so weird. There's like every year, and I'm sure you noticed this from publishing them in the paper, but there's like multiple all conference lists, right?
Oh.
There's the High Country Conference all conference list, which is the 5A and 4A schools in District 6, but then they have to do a separate, here's the 5A District 5 and 6 all conference list that includes all of the Highland players. That it's so weird to me. But
yeah, some of those I have trouble putting much validity into some of the all conference lists. When it's 3 or 4 schools for like basketball, I'm like, it's like practically every starter for every team is making this list. Yeah. It's like, do we really, is this the best way of doing things? And so, I think that's where like the all state and all area and stuff like that is a little better of a gauge to see, who is really the best player in this area or this state for that thing. Cause like you're saying, those all conference lists, I mean, there's 10 million of them. You can't really sift through them all.
Yeah, and it's just, every conference does it their own way, and there's no uniform standards across the board. Yeah. So, anyways, we'll solve all the problems of District 5 athletics in another time. Let's wrap up with Century. You visited Diamondbacks camp. They've got a new head coach, Logan Horrocks. What's he like?
I mean, he's a young, energetic dude. I mean, that's the one thing. The interesting part was, so he came from Jerome, where he was the defensive coordinator, and talking with the Jerome head coach, Sid Gamble, is like, Logan is just this defensive wizard, knows how to game plan, is going to watch 18 hours of film every day to game plan and get a good scheme for that week's opponent. And when Logan came in, he decided that he couldn't do that and properly be a head coach. He couldn't spend so much time on a defense and then also take on all the responsibility of the head coach and know everything about his team. So like he said, one of the hardest things for him when he got the Century job was almost taking a step back and handing the reins of his defense to a defensive coordinator and a guy who had already previously been on the staff and understood the skill sets of a lot of those defensive guys. And so now, you see him at practice and he's able to, kind of roam around, and he's able to kind of have a grasp on what every position group is doing. And that's going to be, I mean, it's an interesting thing. I think a lot of coaches aren't that humble or willing to, kind of step back like that. A lot of them will be gung ho and trying to, go a million miles an hour to make sure that they had their hands on every part of the defense to be their defense. And instead, it's going to be a little bit of a hybrid of, what the previous staff did and a little bit of a hybrid of what Logan likes to do in terms of his defense. So that's going to be interesting to see how it works out. And really, the thing with Century is you go to their practice and they have like 65 kids, like in the whole program. They don't have much depth. And so it's very imperative that they kind of get the buy-in and from what it sounds like they have. I mean, they said their summer weight programs were, some of the best. Logan was at times, back in Twin Falls. And so players like, Brew and Fleischman were leading it. And they were, 6 a.m. All right, here's the text. They have an attendance thing. And, 50 guys would show up out of like 65-person program. And so all that stuff's encouraging. But, they play a week 0 game that's going to be an early indicator of how good they are against Minico. Thing is, Logan was at Jerome for all those years, played Minico plenty. I think in the last Jerome-Minico game, Jerome gave up 3 points to them. So, I mean, he kind of has their number, but he doesn't have the same weapons that he did there. So that's going to be, kind of fun to watch. It's like, can this be replicated at a different school, all this game planning and stuff? So that's going to be fun to watch. And then, obviously where they stack in the district is kind of another conversation. A lot of people, I think, would put them right now at preseason that they're going to finish third in the conference. And that's, they have a first-year head coach. They lost a lot of talent. Realistically, I mean, it's, some of the returning guys, you've got, a couple on defense, but, McKean Romriel at quarterback and Bruin Fleischman at wide receiver. Other than that, a lot of the team doesn't, you're not going to recognize many of them. So a lot of people are counting them out, and they seem pretty happy about that. They're like, oh, we'll be the underdogs. So yeah, I don't know. What have you've talked to him? What are your impressions?
Yeah, I like him. I think he's got a good football mind. I think he is going to be a good fit at Century. It's just a matter of getting those players. So like you said, there's a lot of unknowns. There are a lot of guys that are going to be playing varsity for the first time this year, and how they develop and how they play will go a long way. There's just too many unknowns. But as you mentioned, we're going to find out pretty quick because they do play Minico on Friday night. So not too far from now. We are actually going to broadcast that game on IdahoSports.com.
We'll be there as the Journal, so I'll see you there then.
Yeah, so it won't be me. It'll be Paul Kingsbury and Scott Burton will be broadcasting. But I will definitely be tuned in watching to see how Century does, and to see it because Minico is the favorite over there in their conference this year. So interesting.
Are you going or broadcasting the Rocky Mountain Highland on Saturday or no?
No, so we will not be able to do that game either. But that is I was going to transition into that. That is on Saturday, and that's going to be a fantastic matchup as well. Two teams that played each other in the playoffs last year. What do you think of this matchup? I feel like Highland has more players returning, so I think they have to be favored there. But Rocky Mountain's always so tough.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know a ton about Rocky Mountain other than they're the defending state champions. Highland lost a lot, but like you said, they still return a ton of starters and return a lot of experience. They're also, playing 3 minutes away instead of, a long drive. You never know how that kind of factors into things. I don't know. I don't know if I can handicap it of what the line would be per se. But yeah, it's going to be, because I think we just had to fill out like the media poll. Like most people are going to have Rocky in their top three for no other reason that they won the whole thing last year. And so it'll be, I had Highland at 5. I think, others could have put them at 6 or 7 or 4 or whatever. And realistically, however that game goes, it's just going to flip flop. Like whatever they do is going to be, pretty good indicator right away. But, Highland's got such a tough schedule. You got Rocky Mountain, you got Rigby, Thunder Ridge is expected to be better. I don't know. Do you think Highland's the favorite for that one?
In the Rigby game?
No. In the Rocky Mountain.
Oh, in the Rocky Mountain game. Yeah, I do. I do think that they are the favorite. I think they should win that game because they have more returning varsity starters and playmakers. Rocky Mountain, this will be a developing trend in the next several years. They lost a lot of their players to Owyhee, the brand new high school that also opened in the West Ada district. Not necessarily guys that were going to be starters, but guys that were going to be depth. And so they don't have that depth that they used to have. And I think you will see a gradual transition of Rocky has been head and shoulders above everybody else. I think they're going to come back toward the pack as more and more of these players get funneled over to Owyhee High, the new high school over there. So.
Interesting. I know that's a big thing here is when Century came into existence, and I think it was 99, Pocatello, a lot of their players started to funnel into Century, and the years where they were winning state championships every year, it started, the talent gap started to kind of even out a little bit. So perhaps that's the same thing. I did not know about that, but that makes things a little more intriguing, I guess, for Saturday.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun to check that out as well. You, I did notice on the Idaho State Journal website, you do have your season preview for Highland up on the site. I got a chance to read that. I thought that was well done. Real quick, I wanted to talk about another article that you wrote recently as well regarding James Bodley from North Gem. And if you have not seen James Bodley play any sport really, basketball or baseball, he's a tremendous talent in both. But tell our audience a little bit about what that article was about.
Basically, James Bodley was this, unreal basketball player at 1A D2 North Gem. a small school in Bancroft that, if they're lucky, gets like 50 to 60 kids in the whole school. So, I mean, James was so good that he was averaging like 22 points, 6 rebounds, and playing like one half. I mean, we really thought that we were going to put him as our, all area player of the year. And we ended up giving it to a Preston guy just because, he was incredible for that team. And they were able to go pretty far in the state tournament. But James is this, 6'3", long, rangy kid with handles that are just, I mean, his basketball skills are not what a 1A D2 kid should be. He knows how to blow by kids. He understands how to use space and dribble and, has moves where he can do step backs and, reverses and just he can do whatever he wants on a basketball court. He can dunk no problem. At the District 5 All-Star game, you were there. I mean, he's just throwing down windmill dunks and, coaches are just like, who is this guy? Like, oh, yeah, this guy could probably start on like any team in the whole state. Then you go to baseball season. He's one of the best pitchers for a Marsh Valley team that went 25-0, a Marsh Valley Legion team that just won the regional single A Legion championship. He also was hitting like almost 500. He had the second highest batting average on the high school team. In the state tournament, he scored like, I think he set a record or something. He scored like 90 points in the state tournament game. And in their opening game, I believe he had 25 points in a half. I mean, it was just incredible. But you would think he's the prototypical guy that goes a college, picks up, and they love it. An under the radar kid that, they see his film, no one else does, and all of a sudden he blossoms. I don't know if he's probably not like a Mountain West kid, but I thought he had big sky talent. I definitely thought he was good enough to go to any JUCO in the country, and no one wanted him. No one wants it. Like, it's just baffling to me. And what he was saying and what coaches have said is they don't believe the talent at 1A D2 is like indicative of anything. So they're like, oh, this is great. This guy can, score 25 points and do all this stuff, but who's he playing against? I was like, I just think, you and me have seen him in person. It's like, it doesn't matter who he's playing against. Like, these are skills that can translate to any level. Like, very few kids, I don't care if you're playing against a third grader, understand how to, do a step back and, knock down a three like you're Kevin Durant. Then on another possession, blow past the screen and then dunk the ball. It's like, I don't care who you're playing against at that point. And so, yeah, he had no offers. School, I understand the whole COVID thing. A lot of kids, seniors, got their year of eligibility back. So you've got these plenty of fifth-year seniors. Schools don't know how many scholarships they have, blah, 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 blah. The transfer portal is also, making things tougher when you've got 10 million kids trying to switch schools. And so, I mean, there's, reasons to understand why it could be tough for a kid like James Bodley to go under recruited. But there's still people from this area who I think are better than him, or that he's better than, that are getting signed places. And I just take that as the thing that coaches, college coaches aren't doing their due diligence and are, really trying to project that they're not seeing him in person. They're just looking at who he's playing against and not who he is as a player. It's just, I mean, for a guy who really likes watching, like, and have talked to James, like, I think he's a great player, great kid. It's almost just baffling to me that he's didn't sign. And, now he's decided to kind of go on an LDS mission. So in 2 years, this whole thing's going to start back up again. Coaches are going to be looking at his film, wondering who he played against. And eventually some guy's going to sign him and be like, yep, glad we did that. So yeah, it's frustrating though. And I'm not even a coach, or I've talked to him one time and I'm like, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah, there's definitely a small school bias there. And, we hear the platitudes all the time. Oh, well, if you're good enough, you'll get noticed. It doesn't matter where you go to school. That's not true. It just simply isn't true. And the small schools get the short end of the stick when it comes to that, which then forces those parents to spend lots of money to send their kids to all of these camps.
Yeah.
And exposure events, and not every family can afford to do that, or time wise, travel wise, or money wise. And
well, the other thing too with him is, so you look at last summer, it's not like he could go to anything. COVID shut it down. This year, he just wants to play baseball. And so it's like he's being punished because he's, doing different things. It's so frustrating.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know. It's almost like common sense. If you're a coach and you think you like his skills, bring him in for a workout. Bring him in against your players that are currently on your team and see how he does.
I mean, yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
But because it's one of those things where I think if he played at a 4A or 5A school, he'd be at a Big Sky institution pretty quick. I can't prove that, but I'd be like, oh, that would just make sense to me. And it's kind of annoying because you look at another guy like I don't know, you've seen him like Bridger Hatch at North Gem. He's just like such a fun dude to watch. And I don't know what his college, how his game translates to college, but it definitely is worthy of a look, at least from colleges. And I'm not sure about his recruitment, and know he's gone to a couple camps, but that's another guy where it'll be interesting, another guy from North Gem, to see how his recruitment kind of plays out.
Yeah, they're going to be a fun team to watch this year in football and basketball again, for sure. It'll be a lot of fun. But I really like that article, and everybody should go check it out at IdahoStateJournal.com because it was really well written. What do you got in the works for this upcoming week?
We're going to be cranking out previews. We've got Century and Pocatello in the works. Our preview section will be out in the paper next Friday. We got to go take the picture today with some different high school athletes. So we're going to be working on that. And then, this Friday, we're going to drive to Minico and go check out Logan Horrocks' first game at Century. And then Saturday, it's the big Rocky Mountain Highland game at Holt. So busy week for sure.
Yeah, it is that time of year. And ISU athletics have started. The women's soccer team plays their first game tomorrow. So busy time. Thanks for being with us again, Jordan Kaye from the Idaho State Journal here on the Southeast Idaho Prepcast. We'll be here each and every week talking about the biggest stories from District 5. We'll really get into high school sports action here starting this weekend. It'll be a lot of fun.
Yep, definitely. I'm excited.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you back here next week on the Southeast Idaho Prepcast from Idaho Sports.